Hi there, this is Blayne Rush, and I want to welcome you all to the program. This is the first of a four-part series on selling your ophthalmology practice. If you've not already signed up for the other three parts, I'll encourage you to do so because obviously they play off of each other and it gives you an insight into the entire process. If you need the link, please email me. I also want to commend you on spending the time to educate yourself about the process. You know, we have a deep commitment to educating the market, as we believe that the more educated and sophisticated the market is, it helps the entire market. You know, but before we get started, I want to better introduce myself and our firm. I'm an investment banker. Obviously, the firm is Ambulatory Alliances. We're a full-service healthcare investment banking and M&A brokerage firm that has significant experience in advising physician practice owners and owner-operators of outpatient centers. We've advised on numerous transactions, and we've had various financial and strategic alliance type engagements. I have close to 18 years of healthcare experience with considerable expertise in the areas of business transactions, complex negotiations, and then financial analysis. Been involved with working with over 300 healthcare transactions, hold a master's in health promotions, have an MBA, have an executive certificate in the private capital markets from Pepperdine University. I'm a certified valuation analyst, and I have significant coursework towards a graduate degree in negotiations and mediation from SMU. I hold FINRA Series 79, 63, 24, 82, and 99 licenses, and I'm a licensed real estate broker, and I'm a credentialed mediator and arbitrator. I'm very active as an arbitrator. As you'll get to know me, you'll come to understand that as far as transactions and selling your business or businesses, you know, that we believe that it not only pays to be more prepared, it pays to look more prepared or present that way, because the more prepared that you're seen and the more systematic that the process is, the more respect that is garnered from the buyers. You know, anyone can do an easy deal on the buyer's terms. You know, we don't shy away from difficult transactions nor the obstacles that always arise. And what we do is work to formulate and execute successful strategies and we design creative solutions to complete the transactions at the highest price and the best terms for our clients. It's what you guys hire us to do. As we go through the presentation, feel free to type in any questions that you'll have. There's a question box, I believe, right there. You can just type it in. It comes up on a signal on this side, and I'll work to answer them. If you don't want to put them there, it's fine. You can email. You can call with any questions. If you want to discuss any unique situations, feel free to reach out to us. For some reason, if the question's unclear, I'll try to communicate with you at the end of the program, or if we run out of time, I'll try to get with you through email or whatnot to get those questions answered. We really want to be a resource as far as education and whatnot as much as possible. You know, now that you understand a little bit about us, let's move on to the presentation. Let's get started by trying to get on the same page here and outline or discuss what we mean when we use the word selling. You know, when ophthalmology practice owners hear the word sell, it conjures up all kinds of images, from receiving a major windfall to retiring on the beach to, hey, I'm going fishing, I'm done, to, hey, I'm going to play a lot more golf, to spending more time with their grandkids. When in reality, when we discuss selling, we're speaking about selling anything from 1% to 100% of your business. It could be selling to a physician that will become your partner, to a hospital health system, to a private equity group, to a third-party payer, or a consolidator such as a large group that has ophthalmology and its ancillaries as a focus, or a multi-specialty group. It can mean that you walk away post-transaction. It can mean that you're an employee of the new owner, or that you retain ownership, that you're an employee and are helping the business grow, expand, etc., as well as treating patients. It also can mean that you so-called sell at the startup by creating some sort of strategic alliance with a larger group, a multi-specialty practice, networks, etc. As you'll understand as we move through the presentations, there are many stages to the life cycle of your business, and you can theoretically sell at any point in any of the stages. So let's move on. What's the life cycle of an ophthalmology practice? Everything has a life cycle. You and I have a defined life cycle that's fairly obvious. We see it daily with our kids, if we have kids, but interestingly enough, some of our kids never grow up, and that is true in business as well, as we'll discuss, because not all practices will experience all of the cycles or all of the stages of the cycle, or even get past the first stage, and some's going to skip some stages. Some of the characteristics that we're about to talk about are general in nature. Some apply, some won't apply in every situation. Really, the point is to get an understanding that there is a cycle, and it's important to see and understand that cycle in order to get the entire picture of this process. The stages of life cycle of your business and the overall market, so ophthalmology market more so than, say, the healthcare market, are fairly identical in that there's a startup, there's initial growth, rapid growth, slowing growth, plateau, and decline. Again, there's technically buyers and sellers in every stage of the life cycle. And I'll point out the value of your business, for the most part, mimics the life cycle. Remember this, that buyers or investors are buying the future. They only care about the historical value to the extent that it's an indication of the future earnings. The startup stage is the pre-development phase, where you're trying to figure out what direction you want to go. How am I going to get there? How am I going to pay for it? You could quote unquote sell in this stage to some other physician partner, go be an employee of a hospital or some sort of alliance or some sort of venture with a hospital, or to one of these network type partners. That would look like some sort of alliance, employment with some ownership, bonuses, etc. Then you have the initial growth phase, which is a very important stage in your practice's development towards profitability. This is when you set the tone, lay the foundation. The physicians, the staff, the partners have their first impression of you as a leader. The referral partners and the patients that get a first impression. All of the actors, so everybody that's involved, should be working in the same direction and working to maximize patient volumes and patient experiences. You'll be able to address any operational inefficiencies, cost containments, and concerns about the understanding of the roles and expectations that you have for the staff and other providers. You'll need to seek feedback from your referral sources and patients, and take that seriously. Act on it if it warrants acting on that. Some questions coming in, so I pause for a second. Profits will not be there until the fixed costs are covered. You need to be working towards break even as quickly as possible. I've seen some practices that are a few years old and aren't even out of this stage of development. So all of these all of the strategies, all the things that you do to get there quickly as possible as far as break even is very important. Then you have the rapid growth, or sometimes referred to as expansion growth stage. At this stage, you're covering the fixed costs, have worked out the operational inefficiencies, and are working well with your referral sources. They're making, you're making consistent distributions. Your EBITDA is expanding with each additional patient, each additional case, surgery, etc. One thing to note that people don't always think about is that once you're at break even, depending on the services that you guys offer in your practices and the ancillaries, the surgeries, etc., every dollar of new revenue after break even should add a significant percent of profit to the bottom line. So it could be, depending on what your practice looks like, it could be 40% of every new dollar drops to the bottom line. It could be 50. It could be 80%, depending on, again, the procedures and service, etc., that you're offering within your practice. But the point is that once you're at break even, it's you're in a great position to rapidly increase the profitability, and the growth is very important here. During this expanded growth phase is where the fun begins, where everything that you worked hard for moves faster. Your hard work and strategic operations are paying off with results, and profits are being driven by the core business and patient acquisition activities, be that direct patient marketing, be that referrals, however you're going about acquiring your patients. You have some choices to make during this phase, such as, do you expand clinic locations, providers, etc.? Do you add services, etc.? And we'll get to some points in a minute that come back to this to show you why those are important, and those decisions shouldn't be taken lightly. It is possible that the slow growth phase happens at any time in the practice's life cycle. I've seen practices go from initial growth to the slowing growth, skipping the rapid growth stage, but most likely it'll occur after you capture most of the volume for your referral sources, or you stop advertising, or you cover the market, or you're at capacity, physical capacity, be it with how many patients that the providers can see, or how many that you can handle with your physical plan. This phase is when the growth starts to slow down. The excitement's gone, the partnership matures, referrals begin to decrease the number of new patients. Sometimes the business best practices get overlooked, and cost containment's not looked after as aggressively as it should be. This very often happens when the team forgets about the fundamentals, and thinks that the rapid growth phase is never going to slow down. Since it's football season, I'll use an analogy from my football playing days. You can recover from this stage as far as the slowing growth stage if you go back to the basics. In football, it's stance, blocking, tackle, the things that got you into the rapid growth stage. And there's some other things you can do that we'll talk about in a couple of slides that will help you go back to the rapid growth stage, but I'm going to save that for a couple of slides here. But at the plateau stage, you're having challenges, everything's stalled, you have a good bit of complacency at best. During decline stage, as the name suggests, your business is state of decline. You have a tough time getting key staff and physicians to show up at meetings, and partners are complacent, disengaged. You end up in the various stages for various reasons. Could be internal or external competition as well. But let's move on. Why would I want to sell my ophthalmology practice? Harris Williams and Company, which is a healthcare and life sciences group, published an industry update that included a vision industry overview. Vision represents approximately $40 billion industry comprised of services and sales of corrective glasses, lenses, you know, all the things that the ophthalmologists are involved in. And it's expected of a steady growth of 3 to 4% compounding per year. The overview discusses primary eye care providers, optometrists, ophthalmologists, as well as discussing the industry growth dynamics and market trends. You know, what was noted in the report is that independent eye care providers can control a significant portion of the patient population. You know, the report stated that the ophthalmologists capture about $12 billion of the vision, services, and product spending annually. The number of practicing ophthalmologists expected through 2020 will not keep pace with the underlying demand, which is likely to drive higher production per clinic going forward as demand for medical and surgical eye care grows with the aging population. There and a couple of things that note that I believe will change within the marketplace is some of the scope of practice for, say, optometrists is expanding, or people are pushing for that to expand. Well, that will take up some of the burden that the optometrists are involved in. We believe that it will evolve into having more optometrists, ophthalmologists, subspecial retina optometrists, etc., being in large groups together. And that's not only to spread some of the workload or the requirements, but also when it comes to the referral sources, etc. And we'll talk more about that throughout this presentation, because that's a lot of where we see the industry going, why we see that this is ripe for consolidation, because there's little to no consolidation within the ophthalmology market world on a regional nor national basis. Investors are highly interested in the vision industry due to its large addressable market, the fragmentation, meaning that they have a lot of these independent providers out there and it's not consolidated, and the combination of retail and healthcare characteristics, and then the overall growth opportunities. You know, referrals, operational synergies, and increased negotiation power with payers are all significant benefits that come with consolidation. So really, to get to the question, there's many reasons that you might want to consider selling your practice now or in the near future. Like I mentioned before, conceptually there's buyers that buy or invest in each stage of life cycle. While I'll not have time to discuss all of them, nor the examples and how they fit in each stage, we'll discuss the ones that are the most prevalent. You know, reducing exposure to debt guarantees. Depending on what your size is and where you are in the life cycle, if you're starting up or you need capital, and that capital is debt, the lender will more likely require a personal guarantee. Or if you're expanding, so say that you're making this up for illustration, 5 clinics, 10 clinics, and you want to add a surgery center to your business. Well, you'll need capital for that. And if you're at 10 clinics, but you've been growing 1 a year, and you want to speed up that growth, then you're going to need capital. And some of that capital, from a pure financial standpoint, would be better. There's a higher return on debt than equity. Won't go into that a lot, but there's a significant higher ROI when you take on debt versus giving up equity or as much equity, etc. So there's a balance there. You diversify your risk, so when you sell at certain stages, you could bring on, use the same analogy, you know, you have 10 locations, want to add a surgery center because all the locations are fairly close as far as the market goes. Surgery center can can service all of those guys. Well, there's risk associated with taking on that capital, et cetera. So maybe you want to diversify your risks by bringing on and selling a piece of it. So they're involved with whoever the new investors, buyers, managers, whatever, are involved with that risk. To improve management, some physicians just want to be physicians or physician fatigue, and recognition of limitations set in, and a partner, if you will, can handle the management aspects. While others focus on the business aspects that allow physicians to be physicians. Maybe gain strategic benefit. Strategic benefit could be access to better contracts, a built-in referral source, such as selling to a multi-specialty group or network. There's a lot of definitions or examples as far as strategic benefits goes, but just want to give you a picture of that. For a liquidity event, what that is, you receive upfront cash in exchange for future distributions. The sales proceeds are taxed as capital gains compared to your salary or distributions that are taxed as ordinary income. You capture the future value today. In other words, assuming that you have true profits, profitability, that and you're able to receive proceeds for a number of years, say 4 to 10 years, depending on the profile of your business, size of it. It could be less or it could be more than the 4 to 10 years worth at closing. So, hey, I'm selling my business. I'm going to get 4 years worth of profitability, 10 years, whatever. It's pure example today versus some of that over the next years. That gets taxed as capital gains tax, so you get a bump there as well. And then you typically have an employment agreement going forward with maybe some bonuses, profit sharing. If it's to a financial buyer, then you'll potentially get 2 bites at the apple. Won't go too much into that, but essentially what you're doing is selling a percentage, 30, 40, 50, 60%, 70%, whatever it is, today, getting that liquidity event, and then you're riding the growth, and you're retaining 30%. Growth and access to capital. Mentioned that a little bit before, but if you wanted to grow faster, again, you have 10 clinic locations, you have 2 surgery centers, have some retail operations, etc. You want to expand, you want to go buy a competitor, you want to expand markets, you're in the LA market, you want to go into the greater San Diego market, you want to go into the San Francisco market, whatever. You'll get growth capital, you'll sell some of your existing business, they'll infuse cash, they'll have cash or expose you to that cash and debt, because again, your return, you want to leverage debt typically, or at least some. It's called leverage. And you'll go buy a competitor, plus maybe do some de novos, which are new centers, etc. So if you want to grow faster, you can gain a partner in order to bring in new physicians, expand clinic locations, acquire other practices, surgery centers, etc. Look at this. Let me look at this. So here's what we're talking about, or what I briefly alluded to before. So if you see this is the life cycle, right? So say that you're at the top of the rapid growth phase. I hope you can see my pointer here. Well, you have this dashed line right here. What that kind of is trying to illustrate is that you can reposition your business, say, from slowing growth stage back to the rapid growth stage. This, for example, can be done by adding locations, acquiring other practices, by selling some equity to a private equity group, by doing some merger that has nothing to do with the private equity group, etc. And it repositions your business on this growth trajectory, and it becomes more valuable because of the expansion, and it repositions you for rapid growth, continuous growth, etc., however you want to kind of term that. So just keep in mind that selling when, where, how comes in all forms or fashion, and it really depends on a lot of things that we'll talk about here. How do I know when it's time for me to consider selling my ophthalmology practice? You know, as far as the most optimal time to consider selling your practice, you know, this is a little bit of science here, but it's also a little bit of art. You know, so you want to consider selling your practice is when an outside investor can add the most value to the partnership, and right as you're peaking with what you can do with the practice. And what you can do with the practice, so don't take that personally. It encompasses more than, hey, what can I personally do? It also is, hey, what am I willing to do? Meaning I'm willing to risk and take on more debt, you know, reinvest the profitability that I've had for the last 10 years to expand, etc. Or do you want to mitigate some of your risk by selling some of it so you're able to grow a lot faster? Because a lot of times you not only get money, but you get some intellectual capital and sophistication that comes along with it as well. But that is the perfect time as far as valuation goes. This can occur at different stages for different practices. Again, there's buyers and sellers at all stages. It's tough to anticipate a future decline in business, so it's necessary to determine where your practice's business is and where it's headed. You know, when you think about this stuff, I kind of recommend that you think of your ownership shares in your practice as you would shares of Nike, Facebook, General Electric, etc. Value can go up or down at almost any time. You know, but let's take a look at the thought process in a more strategic fashion. What we do, if we're brought in early enough, and I suggest that you do the same, in the decision-making process, to recommend a SWOT analysis. There's others that you can do and you can use to get to the same place, but most people have heard of a SWOT analysis. We use that for illustration, you know, because it's the one that's spoke about and heard about. It's fairly easy and straightforward, so we use it. You know, it's SWOT, simple. SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. It's a analysis that guides you to identify the positives and negatives inside your business. That's the S and W. And outside of it, which is your external environment, the O and T. This will help you to develop a full awareness of your situation, which can help with you creating a plan and making the decision of whether you hold or sell. What is your path forward if you sell or hold? You can list the internal and external opposites side by side. You know, when you go through that process, answer a few, simple questions. What's the strengths and weaknesses of your physician group, of your market, your efforts or actions, and what are the opportunities and threats facing it? What can I do better? What can I do more of? And the things that are listed here are not, specifics that are to every center or every practice, regardless of size, etc. These are really for illustration and to get your thoughts around what we kind of mean by that. Strengths, young, engaged partners. If you have these gung-ho docs that are willing to take on, other opportunities or other activities outside of just seeing patients, that's a great thing. If you offer a full range of ophthalmology services and surgeries, because it's a strength, because you don't know what's going to be hotter as far as what the patients need, what the reimbursements are going to go. So within reason, the kind of the more that you're able to offer, it diversifies risk. Well-positioned management team, that comes into play, especially you're looking at a financial sponsor, they want a true business group put together that you're the area leader in a marketplace. Use the San Diego analogy before. Say that you have enough clinics in the marketplace that pretty much you're the household name. Everybody understands you're the dominant player. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these because we have limited time, but you know, opportunities, those are things that that even if an evaluation comes into play, as we'll talk more here. You know, you want the ability to take on more cases, expand, you know, replicable model, low expenses. You know, if somehow you've created some systems in place that make your organization more efficient, you have leverage, buying power with the suppliers. You know, can you acquire other practices, etc. You know, some of the threats are the fast-moving first movers in the marketplace, because you know, this is a you know, wore out kind of cliche, but you know, you're either going forwards or you're going backwards. So you either need to be growing or you need to align yourself with someone that is growing. Because if you wait on the sidelines, there's other people going to go out there and capture the growth, expand. You know, if you're a smaller practice and there's a platform that wants to come into your market, to use San Diego analogy, you know, they're up in San Francisco, or they're in LA and they want to go to San Diego, and they're looking to partner with someone that knows the market, that is involved in the market, and want to buy them or want them to roll up into their practice. And they're going to buy into that market because they'll pay more conceptually, if you're a strong player, for that first guy, because they're having to go into the market. And so you don't want to wait while everybody's, what's those saying, everybody's playing musical chairs. You don't want to wait until the music stops, because you might end up without a chair. You know, we all played that game as kids. But the major threat to the success in the SWOT is competition. So pretty much anything that, in a broad sense, that you can consider competition is a threat to your success. What are the factors affecting the valuation of my ophthalmology practice in each period of the life cycle? Kind of alluded to some of this stuff, but you know, let's go back. Let me see if I can get back to, how does this work? All right, so we'll just use here. Okay, so let's go back to this life cycle slide for a second and walk through this. You know, so we kind of said that, hey, your value kind of mimics this line. That's not 100%, but it's a great foundation, basics for understanding, because it is very, very relative, but it's also fact specific, also business specific, market specific, etc., because there's other things that come involved. But during the startup phase, you know, there's really isn't much affecting the valuation, because it really is just what the underlying costs are of developing the business. Startup costs, you know, that's going to include your fixed costs, such as personal equipment, beginning working capital that you'll need before you're up and running. You're going to have to hire some nurses, administrative staff, management staff, maybe practice manager, maybe some other docs, mid-levels, depending on what you're designed your practice to look like. You're going to have to put out some money for supplies, inventory. You might need to hire some consultants to work on filing Medicare, payer paperwork, whatever. There's a number of different costs that go in there. You just want to make sure that that it's all covered, so that when you take a number divided by the number of shareholders, you get the appropriate amount that you need to put in from the beginning to start the practice. That is essentially the value, unless you have some sort of intellectual property, etc. Once you get into that initial growth phase, your credentials with different payers, and you start seeing patients, doing procedures, that's when the actual potential of the business comes into account. You know, we're going to do, or evaluators, buyers, whoever, going to look at how many docs you have involved, how many owners, what's their ability to acquire patients and their roles, how many patients they will see, and procedures we project that they actually do. Do they have the capacity to see those patients? Do they have the capacity to do all those cases? What is the mix? You know, payer mix, the procedure mix, the you know, service mix, whatever. And what is the projected future reimbursement of each of those? We're also going to look at some of the changes now with regards to value-based purchasing. What's your quality of care? What are the ancillaries that you're doing that is producing revenue? And what others are planned, and how might that overall affect your future reimbursement from Medicare, some of the other payers that are in the market? What are they paying? In some markets, we're seeing some payers go into capitated market with a risk pool and risk scoring. We'll also need to consider hospital purchases of physician practices in the market, how that affects the overall projected growth within the practice, as well as other potential acquirers. Once you have that, the practice starts going up into the rapid growth phase. We're going to be looking at a projection over time into the slow growth and plateau. So we're looking at the life cycle. Once you get into the initial growth phase, the value may actually go down because of the money initially invested is spent, you know, and then you're actually up and running, and all you have are costs and liability. So you're not at that break-even point yet, so you could have debt. So you may actually see a value shrink a little and then kind of come back up following the arch up. Then depending on how much debt you have, we may adjust for that as well, because the value essentially is the value minus the debt, or the formula includes us backing out the debt. If you have two of the same practices with the same profitability and the same capacity, same payer, same acuity mix, and practice A has significantly more debt than practice B, practice A, for its stock, meaning its equity ownership, is going to be worth less because it has the debt. If you add more doctors, what's going to happen is the value will go up because you're going to see more patients, do more cases, assuming that the market supports this. The more ancillaries and higher the acuity of those ancillaries, you're going to have more profit. The more profit generates value for the practice. Let's see. Okay, so we're back to where we should be as far as the slides go. How do I identify the ideal time to sell my ophthalmology practice? You know, that's a tough one because it has a few things that you have to consider, think about, know about. It really depends on a lot on your personal motivations and who you're selling to. When contemplating when the best time to sell, you need to evaluate, you know, probably 4 areas. You know, where are you in your career life cycle? Where's your business in its life cycle? Where's the market in its life cycle? And where are the capital markets? You know, capital markets meaning equity and debt. You know, recall the life cycle slide that we just looked at. You know, from the scientific point, the best time to sell is when the 3 life cycles, your career, your business, and the markets, are about 60 to 70% up the rapid growth stage of the cycle. And when the capital markets are cheap and easy. You know, think about it as far as mortgages goes, because pretty much everybody understands that piece, is that, you know, so when mortgages are cheap and easy to obtain, what happens to housing prices? They go up because the buying power is increased. It doesn't matter if they're a $300 billion private equity group or whatnot. The concept is similar, that they have access to cheaper debt when the debt markets are cheaper and easy. So therefore, because of the return on investment, they're able to pay more for the businesses that they acquire. You know, depending on the business, if it's a small, you know, 1 or 2 physician shop, they have a lot less leverage than here you have 15 different types of providers, you know, multiple locations, etc. They have more leverage. You know, buyers want to know, so when we talk about 60 to 70% of the rapid growth stage, because buyers want to know there's still growth in the business and the market, because you as a seller want multiple buyers to be competing for you at the same time, because competition drives up the value. So the more buyers battling out, buyers are able to pay more, or they're willing to pay more. But it's not realistic that we're able to time it all and hit it all at the same time. So here's some more practical guidelines. As you think at the beginning of your career, a little more into your career, have a lot of gas in your tank, and you want to grow your business. Are you able to go alone, or do you need a capital partner? Do you need some management expertise? You know, if you can go it alone and grow it, you might want to hold it a little bit longer, but you also need to ask yourself, how fast can you grow it alone? Because like we alluded to earlier, others will be entering your market, or your competition is thinking the same thing, and they will be wanting to grow as well. So the speed of growth is important right now, especially in emerging markets as far as consolidation's going, because this market is heating up, and while we'll see a good bit, you know, we still have a good bit of runway and asphalt to go. It's still heating up, you know. So, or are you wanting to have your life back, so to speak, and want to just be a physician again? Those are times to look at selling for you personally. Is your business growing? Is it a dominant player in the market? Is it large enough to garner interest to be a platform? Because now we're in the early part of the rapid growth stage, and we have private equity groups paying a lot of money to acquire platforms that they can in turn build around. These practices are seeing significant interest from private equity and consolidators, because there's not many, but there's a good bit of money chasing those deals. So it's just simple economics. When you got more money, less deal, the price goes up, right? Because of scarcity. Some of the management companies, also known as consolidators, are looking for growth in existing markets and that they are operating in, and they're looking for new markets. We used that scenario before. So they're going to pay a little bit more, or a little bit more of a higher multiple when you're a leader or the second in a larger market. You still have some capacity for growth, and if you can prove to them that there's the ability for growth in your market, if it's a new market for them. If you have gas left in your tank, you're a market leader, and you want to increase the speed of your growth, then you're in great position to maximize your value and sale. While each market is different, most have similar characteristics. In order to put yourself in the best position, you need to be proactive and know that the market's heating up. But again, we do have a window here. You know, the rest depends on where you are in your desires and where your business sits in the SWOT analysis, on the business cycle, etc. Is there a bad time to sell my ophthalmology practice? Well, as previously stated, there's buyers and sellers in all of the stages of the business cycle. Having said that, there are less optimal times to sell your practice. You know, interestingly, I read an article from a consultant that works with ophthalmology physicians to sell their practices, and it was in one of the ophthalmology publications. You know, he wrote that you want to be at retirement age, and you want to be wanting to sell and leave the practice because no buyer wants you standing over them, essentially. Well, I totally disagree. Many physicians believe what the guy wrote and come to me and say, hey, Blayne, I'm retiring in 9 months and want to sell my practice. Well, if you have 10 clinics and multiple providers and don't see patients any longer, then yes, because you're personally not the reason that the business and the patients are coming to your practice. Then you can leave and it not be a problem. But you're a smaller group and you're seeing patients full time, then we'll have to be able to show them a transition plan that works and one that they believe, which in most situations they won't believe it, because the practitioner is the business. We're, this is professional services business, and the complex buyers want the same providers going forward. I suspect that the author of that article works with single docs or 1-2 docs that only sell to other docs for him to write that. So I would agree in that situation with that makeup that yes, they maybe want some transition time, but a new doc taking over a practice might not want the other doctor to be around. But for the larger practices, they want a continuity of the business. And I would tell you that that's a red flag, and it's one when we lecture about red flags, the provider and the provider continuity and staff turnover, that's a big one. It's huge. And especially in the secondary markets and for sure the tertiary markets. And what I mean by that is, so primary market would be Dallas, Texas. Secondary market might be Tyler, Texas. The tertiary market's a rural area. Just for reference. But from a pure financial sense, if you're still growing rapidly, recruiting new referral sources, growing in surgical volumes, patients, etc., or have a market that will allow this, and you can do it alone, that's in your best financial interest to capture some of that growth. You don't want to wait until you captured it all, because again, the buyers care about future, not historical. You're better off from a financial standpoint to capture some of that growth because before you sell, because you'll sell for a multiple of those profits. So say, I'm making this up, that you can go capture another $200,000 of repeatable profitability by doing X, Y, and Z, and you can prove that that's going to be repeated in the future, then you're going to sell that $200,000 profitability for a multiple of that. So it's about timing. You don't want to wait too long, nor sell too early. So it's a fact-specific business. So you look at all of those things in and of itself and have to make a decision. You have to know your business, your personal desires, your competition, and the overall market. We really do not, regardless of what stage your practice is in, sell before or after the timing's right. I think the market is very, very solid right now. The market's good. I speak to a lot of private equity groups week in and week out, and they're very, very attracted to this market for the various reasons that we spoke about. So I think that if you have an interest in selling, and when I say selling, also mean expanding within the next 5 years, I think you need to do an analysis of your business and look and say, okay, here we are. If we had this type of buyer, that type of buyer, then you need to look at it in a serious light. So the bad time would be, hey, we're past the growth stage, or we're at the 90 percentile of the growth, and while there's some people that might buy you for the return on cash and to add growth to their bottom line, the value is not going to be there, and they're not going to pay as high of a multiple as they would have if your business was presented in a different stage of that life cycle. That's kind of all we have for today. If this is something that you guys are interested in, if there's questions, I see a couple of questions here that I'm going to reach out to those folks because they're not, in my mind, directly related to this stage of the presentation. We have three more of these. I encourage you to sign up for those if you haven't signed up for them. If for some reason you don't have the link, then feel free to reach out to me via email or whatnot. Call me, whatever you need. But I appreciate your time. I thank you for your time, and I hope and wish everybody a great weekend. Thanks much, and have a great weekend.